Hi, horse friends. Today's video covers one of the most disturbing animal welfare investigations we've seen in recent years. But before we talk about what investigators found, I want to talk about the woman who refused to let the story die. Her name is Jennifer Raymond, founder of the Humboldt Spay Neuter Network. And in my opinion, she deserves to be recognized as a hero. For nearly 20 years, rumors circulated that dogs sent to Miranda's rescue near Fortuna, California, were disappearing. Most people heard the stories, but had no way to prove what had happened. Jennifer decided she wasn't willing to ignore those questions any longer. Last year, using money left by her late mother, Jennifer purchased the Victorian home next to Miranda's rescue. She didn't buy it because she wanted the house or the view. She bought it because she wanted to investigate what had happened to the dogs that so many people believed had simply vanished. That is an extraordinary commitment, and personally, I think her determination and courage deserve recognition. She spent months filing public record requests, comparing shelter records, speaking with volunteers, and trying to piece together what had happened to hundreds of animals transferred to the rescue. At the same time, another volunteer named Sabrina Woods was asking many of the very same questions. Woods had become attached to several dogs, including one named Cain. After they were transferred to Miranda's rescue, when she couldn't find evidence showing where those dogs ultimately ended up, she began requesting records herself. Neither woman initially knew the other was conducting the same investigation. Eventually, one of the shelters contacted Jennifer and told her someone else was requesting nearly identical documents. That's when Jennifer Raymond and Sabrina Woods connected. Together, they began comparing records from shelters throughout California, looking for answers. Then Jennifer made a discovery that changed everything. According to investigators and court documents, she went onto the neighboring property and dug into an area where she believed animals might be buried. She later described uncovering the body of a dog, saying she first found fur before realizing she had discovered a deceased animal. She also said the dog's muzzle appeared to have blood on it. That discovery prompted authorities to begin taking the allegations far more seriously and ultimately helped launch what has now become one of the largest animal cruelty investigations California has seen in years. Today, investigators say they have recovered the remains of at least 117 animals from the property. They have also recovered dozens of canine skulls, hundreds of additional bones, hundreds of dog collars, and multiple microchips. Authorities are still trying to determine what happened to hundreds of additional animals that records suggest passed through the rescue. Before we continue, it's important to remember that this remains an active criminal investigation. No criminal convictions have occurred, and no charges have been filed at the time of this recording. Throughout this video, we'll focus on verified information released by investigators, official court documents, and public statements, while allowing the legal process to continue. For years, Miranda's rescue promoted itself as a no-kill animal sanctuary. Like many rescue organizations, it accepted dogs transferred from municipal shelters across California. Shelters believed they were sending difficult-to-place dogs somewhere where they would receive rehabilitation, veterinary care, and eventually be adopted into loving homes. On paper, everything appeared normal. Dogs were transferred, shelters updated their records, the rescue continued accepting more animals. But behind the scenes, volunteers were beginning to notice something didn't add up. Dogs they remembered well seemed to disappear without the usual trail of adoption announcements, social media posts, or families celebrating bringing home a new companion. Rescue organizations typically share successful adoptions because those stories inspire donors and reassure shelters that animals are finding permanent homes. According to multiple volunteers, those success stories simply weren't there. As Jennifer and Sabrina continued comparing records from shelters throughout California, they began identifying patterns that raised even more questions. Authorities say those records eventually became an important part of the investigation. On April 22nd, investigators received what they described as credible information involving allegations of felony animal abuse, animal cruelty, fraud, and conspiracy. A search warrant was obtained. Investigators began examining the property, interviewing witnesses, collecting business records, reviewing transfer documents, and gathering evidence. But what they uncovered only expanded the investigation. As detectives reviewed shelter records from across California, the numbers became increasingly concerning. Sheriff William Honnell later announced investigators had identified approximately 900 animals that had been transferred to Miranda's rescue over roughly the previous 5.5 years. However, investigators could verify only a relatively small number of documented adoptions. That left hundreds of animals whose whereabouts investigators said they could not yet explain. Those findings prompted authorities to return with an even larger team. This wasn't simply a local sheriff's office investigation anymore. The operation included forensic specialists, anthropologists, veterinary forensic experts, representatives from the California Department of Justice, the USDA, the FBI, and numerous other agencies working together. Ground-penetrating radar was brought in to identify disturbances beneath the soil. Investigators marked several locations. Then they began excavating. What they found shocked even experienced investigators. Authorities say they recovered the intact remains of 117 dogs and several horses from 2 primary burial sites. Nearby, investigators also recovered 21 canine skulls, hundreds of additional bones, multiple microchips, and more than 600 dog collars. Many additional remains were reportedly too decomposed to recover completely. One of the most heartbreaking discoveries wasn't simply the number of deceased dogs. It was those collars, more than 600. Each one likely belonged to an individual dog. Each collar represented an animal that had a name, an animal that someone loved, an animal that was believed to have been given another chance through the rescue. According to investigators, many of those dogs may never have received that second chance. Veterinary forensic specialists later x-rayed many of the recovered remains. According to the Humboldt County Sheriff's Office, preliminary examinations found evidence consistent with gunshot wounds in numerous dogs. Investigators are now using recovered microchips to identify individual animals and match them back to shelter transfer records. That work could take months, possibly much longer. The rescue's founder, Shannon Miranda, has publicly denied many of the allegations. According to public statements, Miranda maintains that the rescue operated legitimately and that euthanasia only occurred in limited situations involving terminal illness or animals posing serious safety risk. Miranda has also urged the public not to rush to judgment and to allow the legal process to determine the facts. That distinction is important. Allegations are not convictions. Authorities still have an enormous amount of evidence to process. Every recovered microchip must be traced. Every transfer record must be reviewed. Witnesses continue to be interviewed. Veterinary forensic examinations are ongoing. Financial records are being compared alongside sheltered records. Only after investigators complete that work will prosecutors determine whether criminal charges are appropriate. Regardless of what ultimately happens in court, this investigation has already had a profound impact on California's rescue community. Numerous shelters have suspended or permanently ended transfers to Miranda's rescue. Organizations have worked to relocate surviving animals from the property. Volunteers who believe they were helping save lives have publicly described feeling devastated and betrayed. Many simply want answers about the dogs they cared for. Some families are wondering whether a dog they surrendered years ago could eventually be identified through recovered microchips. For many people, this investigation has become deeply personal. It also raises difficult questions for the rescue community as a whole. How does a rescue organization receive hundreds of transferred animals over several years without concerns being identified sooner? Should shelters require routine audits of rescue partners? Should rescues accepting large numbers of animals be required to provide documentation adoption outcomes? Should there be statewide standards for reporting transfers, adoptions, deaths, and euthanasias? Cases like this demonstrate why transparency matters. Most rescue organizations are run by compassionate people who dedicate their lives to saving animals. Those organizations depend entirely on public trust. When allegations this serious emerge, they don't just affect one rescue, they affect confidence in the entire rescue community. That makes accountability, documentation, and oversight more important than ever. I also want to return to where this story began, with Jennifer Raymond. Without her willingness to spend years asking difficult questions, without using her own inheritance to purchase the property next door, without countless public record requests, without refusing to let the rumors simply fade away, it's entirely possible that none of this would have ever come to light when it did. Personally, I think Jennifer Raymond demonstrated extraordinary bravery. She followed the evidence even when it would seem to be easy to walk away. And I believe her persistence played a critical role in bringing these allegations to light. Whether you agree with every decision she made or not, there is no question that her determination forced difficult questions to be asked. And because of that, I believe she deserves to be recognized for her courage. As this investigation continues, we'll continue following verified developments rather than speculation. If charges are filed, we'll cover them. If investigators release additional findings, we'll bring you those updates as well. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember, I am not AI. If you listen closely, you can hear me breathing.